Hello, everybody. So here we are for the final talk for the weekend and kind of the close for Australian Photography Awards for another year, which is a little bit crazy to wrap our heads around. Oh, for me to wrap my head around. I don't know if it's crazy for you to wrap your heads around. So pleased to have this conversation today with our committee members for this year who lots of new friends, like the people that we hadn't met before, which is a real thing that Harriet, Gus and I try to do every year, is to expand our committee. And this is the way that we feel we can kind of keep discovering new work, keep bringing new voices into what we're doing. So with today's chat, we have Nicholas, we have Anu, we have Ruiqi, and we have Phuong. And we're going to be talking about each of the individual practices and finding some threads that I think is going to run through the work. And possibly talking a little bit about what we've seen in the imagery in terms of Australian Photography Awards this year. As we're talking, there's going to be some photos from all the panellists that are sort of cycling over. And with all the talks this weekend, it's just been kind of open to people if they've got a question they want to kind of throw out, by all means. And one thing that I really am curious about, and that I think is that binds everybody's work here, is the way that time is used throughout the practice. And it's something we think about a lot in terms of, the images that we're, seeing when we're judging. And all the artists here are working on long-term projects. And Anu, with your book that's come out, I know that you spent like a decade, right, working on that.
Yeah, it was 10 years, my entire 20s.
And I guess, can you talk about, how that started and when you kind of realised, this is something that needs that kind of amount of time? And also, how do you know, how do you tie a knot on that to know when it's finished?
Yeah, so when it started, actually, it wasn't what it is now, for sure. It was a lot of, street photos, not actually any of my family members. But yeah, I think the time was necessary for it to evolve and become what it needed to be. It was a lot had happened in that time. My grandfather passed away, my uncle passed away, and I had changed a lot as a person, and I think that book really reflects that as well. What was the second part?
Yeah, I guess
tying the knot.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. For me, it's how do you... that's such a long time to be working on a project. I mean, some people would turn out 10 projects in that time. Or if you think about people working on assignments, how quickly that can happen. So I guess when did you know that you'd taken the last photo for that book? And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still actually making work. Even though I've made the book, I'm still making similar work of my family. And I just feel like it's an ongoing archive. And even though I've release the book, it's just one kind of punctuation, and it's just going to keep going and going and going. It was really hard to kind of put the book out as well, because I had so many different feelings about even just sharing the work at all. It was such deeply personal work. I'm just I didn't know it felt right. But I think now that I've done it and the response it's gotten from people, I'm just really happy that it's out in the world. I think that was ultimately what made me kind of take it out and put it out in the world.
Well, I'm very glad you shared it, so thank you so much. Cool, so I'd love to ask Ruiqi the next question. So, I guess the first time I saw your work was in the bonus prize, was it last year? Yeah, I think last year.
Yeah, last year.
And yeah, it was this sort of incredible thing, because you see the galleries online when they get released, and I remember going, we were talking about it, and we're there's a yellow rectangle, what's this work? And then when we saw it in the gallery, I remember everyone, Harriet, Gus and I, we were all just kind of blown away by the work. And we met very briefly that night, and then now you've been dragged into the committee. So can you just talk about, and I guess what struck us was, this is a work that has required a lot of time. You can see the labour that's gone into it. Can you tell people about the work and how it came to be?
The work is I actually took some of photo myself. Like during the lockdown in Melbourne, like there's a little bit break time between two lockdown, and then I finally can get some haircut. So I very exciting go get a haircut and just back my house and take some photo, and then I think it's like after a quite long time, sometimes the idea is not that ready for everything. Sometimes it's just a moment in your life, and it gives you a moment, and then you think, have some time to recall the past, and then you have a time to actually think about it and everything that in your memory at your points, and then you find, okay, this something that's something happened past, and then made me have this kind of feeling about the reality or the other people around you, everything. And then I think about what I feel during the COVID, and then I'm thinking about and when I do the Photoshop, in the computer, when you change the size of the picture, you see a totally very, very different appearance of your image. It's different when you change the size and everything. And then I think, like, it happened in the computer. How about I put it in the physical world? How it would change when people, when audience see my photo in the physical world. And then I did a little bit experiment, test about this, and then I felt, okay, when I put it in the physical time, the picture won't move, won't change like in the digital world in your computer. You have to move yourself. And when you move yourself, you are doing the interact with the photo. And I think, okay, when I live very far from this photo, I didn't actually, like you say, just see a yellow photo there. You can't actually see who is in that photo. I think it's like a very like my feeling during the Cold War. Like, did I really know what happened in the world, except the like people around me? Did I really know like what happened in China, what happened in Australia? I can't really give a comment for it, but I know what I myself and other individuals around me, what they experienced. And then I back to that, like if we trying to get close to different individuals, then we finally can find more details about this person. But from me, like our eyes, our opinions to the people and the big image is always change. So I made this work. It's like a challenged audience, a lot of people, when they standing from that work, they trying to get very close. And also, it's very interesting thing, like people use their phone, iPhone, phone to use their camera function to zoom out. It's zoom out, right? Zoom out the picture, and they say that the people in there. So it's like people always can find the way to trying to understand something, and then I think it is a very important thing in our life, and that make us closer and more easier to understand each other, and then probably that our society can give us a better view of our life, something like that.
Because I love that, seeing that kind of physical experience that people had with that work, where they were like, you were almost like nose to the print to like, really understand it, and moving in and out. Nicholas, how are you?
I'm well, Tom.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I think Nicholas, like your work that you're doing at the moment, working across basically between Melbourne and Darwin at the moment. Obviously, like working with First Nations people, and being like coming from Melbourne there, how important has time been in kind of like creating this project, spending time there to kind of not just be visiting and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a loaded question, Tom, I guess, in a way. There's a number of ways I could sort of feel like I could approach this. I suppose like photography for me is, and thinking a little bit about how it relates to the communities that I work with, and I don't just mean Indigenous communities that I engage with in the Northern Territory. I mean, I've also got some communities that I work with in Melbourne. And part of the thing about time is that when I'm making photographs, it's like often it's an intuitive sense of what I'm doing. The actual story takes a little bit of time to emerge. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend going about things that way, because I suppose like from a financial point of view, it's pretty unsustainable. But I think you know, if your emphasis is on collaboration and building relationships, then you can't come into a community with a prefixed idea of what the story is going to be. That's something that takes time to evolve. It takes relationships to build that to people, to the point where people feel like they can feel comfortable in making a contribution to that narrative. So it's years, as Anu pointed out in relation to her book. Yeah.
And I guess like what does life look like for you in Darwin, and like, are you photographing every day? Is it a really slow process for you where you're just doing it occasionally and then? Yeah,
well, it's a funny thing, because I guess I'm someone that feels the relationships are the most important thing, and if you have relationships at the centre of your photography, that means doing things I suppose very differently. So photography is great, and I know that there's a number of photographers over the years that have spoken about photography as being sort of like a ticket into a world that they're not familiar with. But building the relationships up sometimes means that the relationships are what need attending to, and that doesn't always translate to photography. So it's a hard balance to strike, but relationships, when I say a relationship, I don't just mean a connection. I mean, taking phone calls at 10 o'clock at night and attending. There's a whole sort of series of obligations that come through that, and sometimes it's very difficult. But in the case of the work in Darwin, I mean, I spent some time this year, and it was the first time that I went back to one of the communities that I worked with, and I didn't take my camera. I was there, as someone that has a relationship with that community, and was there to see people and to attend to those relationships. It's not always about photographic opportunity. So that's I suppose something to bear in mind. I mean, photography is a great way of starting that conversation and starting that connection and turning the connection into a relationship, but eventually the relationships sort of stand as their own thing, and that's really the most rewarding part of the work that I've done. Yeah.
Do you think, because I know you've done like other projects that are so different, like the disassembly line, where there's an image from there which we saw in stories a few years ago, which is almost like it's the complete opposite approach, where you've got in some ways very short windows and intensive time to kind of make the work.
Yes and no. I mean, I feel like the key here is we're sort of talking about an outsider coming into a community, and the thing that I've found over the years with a variety of projects is that the really critical thing is to have a middleman, so someone that understands the dynamic and the hierarchy that exists within that community, and for the photographer to accept that they're kind of the guide, they're your reference point, and if that person has a good standing within that circle of people, then people are much more likely to accept and to trust you, and to see that you've got a level of accountability there that kind of distinguishes you from someone that's sort of just flying in and flying out of that space.
And Hi, Phuong. So, yeah, Phuong, can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, like, with your project work, photographing your community, how this is shaping up? And I know you're doing a residency at the moment at CCP, and I'm curious on, like, how, like, is this the project that you're working on there? How's it beginning to shape up? How's the residency tying into that work?
Oh, thanks, Tom, for asking me last. I've got to listen to Anu, Nicholas, and Ruiqi about their answers, and I actually relate to all of them. Because my background in Vietnam has really shaped my relationship with time and photography. Because the context of Vietnam is that was always been an easy target for ethnographic extraction of photography since the American War, or what we call the Vietnam War. It was like the first war that got televised, and also the first war that the narratives were told by the losers. So, and also until this day, there's like photography tour where foreigners can take and come to Vietnam to take photos and win awards of like sailing village or anything. So I'm obsessed with the ideas of how the place that I lived in for the first 20 years of my life is such an easy target for like quick photography, and how I can take time to subvert that in as an act of, I'd say, decolonization. And then I got to Australia, living in Sunshine, Victoria for the majority of my time in Australia last year. I noticed that I cannot really take photograph of a white country. Yeah, I was looking at ways that people have been photographing developed countries, like through the likes of Stephen Shore and South and Joe Merowitz or whoever. And I feel like I don't really like that. And the more I stay in Australia, the more I stay within the Vietnamese community that I live within, I found out that there's such a deep connection with the colonial structure that if I had not been spending time with the project, I couldn't have seen it. Yeah, I realized that the state of migrants in Australia connect like directly with the states of the colonial structure within Southeast Asia. Yeah, so my project, wow, it's about community, and it's a direct documentary of my experience collaborating with the community members. It's also talk about my unlearning of this perception of how the colonial system rule over migrants and how it's persisted to this day. And a bit like Anu, I started off just photographing the streets and trying to find connections with this space. But then, like Nicholas, the most meaningful stuff coming out of it was building relationship with community. And much like Ruiqi's idea of how perceptions can change within time through photography, I do think it applies to my work as well. Yeah, and sorry, Tom, but it was not really a residency. It's an internship. It's different. So but working with the CCP closely is still very informative in a way that by itself it is a community. And coming to Australia, I kind of like jumped straight on into CCP to see what's going on, where I see Anu work. The first, like literally 2 weeks of my arriving into Australia, and then attending events and seeing all the people and talking and getting to know people was such important aspects of what it's like, what it's like to be living in Australia as an artist, and also just as a person, making these friends who also enjoy the same things that you do. Yeah.
Cool. So, I think like one of the conversations that's rightfully at the forefront of photography that has been for a while, for a long time, is like that power dynamic that exists, I guess, between the photographer and what they're taking pictures of, which forever was just viewed as, of course, like, the people in front of the camera. But I think that view has expanded over the time to, include things like environment, animal life, other than human life as well. So it's a conversation which I see that's continuing to expand. And something that strikes me between all your practices is I think all the approaches that you're taking is trying to shift that that balance that's going on, you know, that traditional kind of balance that happened between photographer and what they were making pictures of. So, you know, there's definitely limitations always that are going to exist within photography. But I'm wondering, and an open question for everybody, what ways are you using photography to kind of shift that power dynamic? And maybe Anu, if you want to...
So I photograph with a medium format camera that I hold at my waist. And it was like a very intentional choice because I found that I could engage with whomever I was taking a photo with. I could look at them. It felt a bit more like I wasn't hiding my face. And I felt like that was like a more comfortable dynamic for us, for them to feel comfortable, for me to feel comfortable. And it was, yeah, I think important for them to see my face as I was taking a picture. Yeah, so for me, it's like, I think also bringing it back to the long form, I think that really contributes to that comfort level as well. It's like a respect for the person that I'm taking photos of, just to kind of know them, to be in that presence for ages, for years really, before I start taking photos.
And like with because your family are pictured in the book quite a lot. Like, so I guess, like, you know, they must be seeing it as you're making it, especially with like a 10-year project. I'm sure that you're sort of showing, you know, some stuff. But like, what is their feeling about the book? Do they have the same interpretation or understanding that you have to it, or is it something totally different again? Are they just thinking that you're making pretty pictures? Or
Yeah, a bit of that actually. Like, they don't quite understand it, or I wouldn't say understand, that's not the right word. I think they love that I make the book mainly because it is a big reason for me going to India a lot. So it's like, I think our relationship has just developed so much more because of, you know, the motivation of making the book. And yeah, so I think they don't really care too much about me taking photos. It's just, it's brought us closer together, so yeah.
And Nick, how about for you? Like, you know, there's that constant sort of, you know, that dynamic between the people that you're photographing and you being the photographer. And I guess, like, have you found like approaches or like ways in which to kind of shift that dynamic?
Well, I feel like one of the things that's been really important for me is to try and understand the priorities that shape like the communities that I'm dealing with, what's important to them in a photograph, to ascertain a sense of what their value is and what's at stake for them in that photographic encounter, and to try and use that understanding, I suppose, to make, ultimately, yeah, you want to make images that are pleasing and valid to that community. And so that means, yeah, I suppose maybe putting your own preconceptions on hold when you go into a space or engage with the community, to take that time to understand, you know, what their priorities are in the image making process, and then to be able to build on that set of skills and to be able to make photographs that I suppose are able to have that dialogue between what interests you, but that is also of value and significance to the community. So I think the other thing there that's sort of interesting and comes back to this idea of time is that you got to kind of earn your stripes in a lot of these communities, right? Like a lot of the communities that I work in, you know, they're I suppose on some level kind of used to having, whether it's service providers or outsiders coming in, but there's an authority that you have to work to build in order to tell the story. And if you're not considered within that space as being a person that's, you know, got the authority to be able to tell that story or share that story, then yeah, I mean that takes a long time to build up. And I dare say that it comes back to, you know, part of that authority comes from understanding, well, what's at stake in representing these people or these places or this community from the perspective of the participants or the collaborators.
Great. How about for you, Phuong? Like, you know, how does like with your project and the way that you're photographing people, are you using certain approaches to, you know, find collaboration or like for people to gain that understanding of where the images are ending up and the context in which they're being presented?
I used to struggle a lot with trying to find people that I can photograph. I moved here without knowing anyone, so building that relationship from scratch is quite a meaningful process for me, because it means that not only I have to like work as a photographer, but also have to know these people as people. And my process is, I say it's quite collaborative because I get really close to my sitters, and the fact that they get to be the one directing many of the photos, were very inspiring to me. And many of the subjects in my photos are my former housemates or other artists I deeply admire, or just people that have like contributed to the narratives of the diaspora in Australia that I get to like talk to and interview and educate me about what it's like to be Vietnamese in Australia. Yeah, for example, in 2016, the Vietnamese language program in Foots Cray Primary School was cut off completely without any notice. So none of the parents were informed about it. And so I got to talk to one of the parents who was a leading campaign activist against that decision. And I got to talk to him about how he turned that campaign into a beautiful artwork. And yeah, so it's all about this. It's the project became my own unlearning of my previous perception of the community, and how I invite these people in to teach me and to gain knowledge.
And Ruiqi, how about for you? You talked a little bit about with your previous work, how it started with self-portraiture, and then it kind of grew from there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So tell me, like, when you're making pictures of other people, like, what does that look like? Do they understand how that's going to appear in the artwork? And even, like, you know, when you're making the images, do they understand that it could be sitting in a gallery wall or something of that nature?
Oh yeah. So, like the work that I took for other people's portraits is like this year I get commissioned by MAF to do an investigation about the LGBTQIA plus community who has relationship with the city of Monash. So I to discuss about their experiences relate to the COVID. So the first is the problem is like you need to find the people that who have who has the relationship with the city of Monash. Like you can study there, you can work there, you can like there have your love spot in the city of Monash, and then I find like different like people from different cultural background, like Asian people, like local people, and also there's a student, and also there's they also different age, you know. So it's really interesting to talk with different people about their experiences related to COVID, and also I know like sometimes people worry about, you know, when you do interview with them and you record everything, you know, and you know you some people I understand like some people probably gonna worry about, okay, maybe after I back home I feel I don't want my talk that's live in your hand, you know. And then I told them like I'm not gonna do any record, I'm just gonna do some notes that remind me like what we have been talked before, and it seems and also relate to the COVID. So my work is like how I can reflect the people's experiences relate to COVID, and then I find like I can't really only talk about the post-COVID experiences, because we call it post-COVID experience like we are here today. It's because there's a private. It's called private COVID period, and also the COVID period. So that make we live in this time like called COVID. So something happened past. In fact, what we feel today. So my work was like I cut my work to like 3 parts. Like the first part is represent the time that before the COVID, like we feel that time is very normal, have that sense kind of normal for us. Even at that time, maybe we probably feel like not normal at that time, but because the COVID, because lockdown, everything changed, then you have that feeling like I want to back to the time that this chaos happened, and then I can live my life like general life, And so I decided like take a general portrait for each of my participants. Just like I asked them, what you have been doing a lot when you before the lockdown, and what your life looks like. And then I asked them pick the point that place that they been there a lot, like their normal general life like before, and daily life, and dress their clothes, and also bring the things that they usually do. So I took a very, very like normal general portrait for them, and I didn't like do a lot of like the retouch or something. I just want you see this photo. It felt like okay, it's just like general portrait. That's it. That's the sense that I want to feel like the life, the life that they live in before the COVID, and also I think like during COVID, because it's the LGBTQIA plus community, so some like it's not, and also a lot of young people here, like it's not really they have voice, like actually I think like in the lockdown time, individuals we are isolated in our house, so it's not actually you can have a lot of voice that people can hear, and so I asked them to pick a sound that they think is most related to their life during the lockdown. And I didn't play the sound to the audience because I think, but I just write the state. I tell you, this is the song of silence. This is a song of, it's a song of something, so, sorry. It's like they all different, they all pick the different kind of song, so which is very interesting that you can feel the life like in the lockdown time. So I remember that one participant, she picked up a song that she people that's walking on the stairs, because she said like at that time she was in China, so when the COVID there, sometimes you need to be isolated in your home, and then she stay home, and she held people walk up or down on the stairs, and sometimes so it's very interesting to ask them to do that, and then for the post-COVID, and then I took a portrait that totally underexposure, so you can't really see the face from the photo. It's just totally black, but you have to know like the people there. I didn't like just find some place that just take an underexposure photo and tell you, this is a portrait of someone. No, there's people just sitting in front of my face. I just change the setting of the camera and take a totally underexposed photo, and then I record things that they told me, and record the the memories, and then I took some of references, photos of them, and I changed them to totally threshold photos, and then I refer them, and I hand cover them on their portrait. And because I think when you record all the stuff, it's a very abstract view of each of people, and I cannot say that I understand totally of them, so I can't really tell you what they are, in the post-COVID. I can really tell you like there's a person there, and they are very abstract. And then just to encourage audience, like look through all those stuff and think about there's real people here, and you are real as well, and we all have been experiences all the stuff like in this few years, and to trying to like make everybody think about their experiences and all the my participants' experiences, and feel like the commonplace they have and something different, and like to trying to find the way that we can all in this society and have a better
So with the photos that you're making of people, you're not trying to say this is exactly who they are in your pictures. You're leaving room for interpretation, and you're not trying to summarize them in that photograph. Is that accurate? Like by playing with the materiality of it, and hand coloring.
I will state to them like what I'm gonna do. The one is general, the one is sound, the one is underexposed. Like ask them whether you feel is a good way to resonate your life, and also like the jazz and the sport, everything is they choose. I didn't choose for them, and also the sound they choose as well. And
I think that's such an interesting element, the sound. And so you're not when you're presenting the work, that's not even something that you're adding to it. That's just something that influences the way you make the picture. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think the more like myself involved a little bit, I think it's the last part. Like the abstract stuff. I referred the photos from their, some is their house, they're the things that the stuffs, and then I referred and translate to like this photo, translate to the image and make it more abstract. Like it's already abstract. Like trying to translate, translate the portrait that totally underexposed. That's something that photography cannot tell you, because experiences you can use the image to tell people like what you have been through like 2 years. It's just crazy.
I think something that's really really great, Ruiqi, about what you've said there is that I suppose one of the keys to these things is you come to these encounters or these communities as an outsider. But part of the, I suppose, the process of creating that dialogue is bringing to the encounter a willingness to learn, and to have your, I suppose, presumptions challenged through the experiences that you have, and that's kind of what makes this work so rewarding. And I know, Phuong, you used the term ethnography before, which I guess has connotations with anthropology, but even though it's got sort of that academic connotation, I suppose fundamentally it's about trying to learn, and having a photographer that's willing to have their own views and have their own personality, I suppose, transformed by the encounters that we have with other people and communities. That has to be, the most rewarding thing, and something that can really, I think if people see that desire, that you're not only there to make a photograph, you're there to try and understand a situation or something that, that's such a hugely significant part of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think we're like starting to get an idea of like, the depth that goes behind, project work and the possibilities of that. And I want to almost take it in a totally different direction now, which kind of brings us back to us sitting here today and having judged and looking at a single image photography award, which it's such an interesting dynamic, and something that we always talk about is, we're looking for an image that has depth to it, where we're able to get a sense of all this consideration that each of your practices have. So I'm curious to hear kind of from everybody about what that experience has been like viewing single images and like looking for these layers within those very small parameters in a way. Was that something that like how did you feel kind of realizing it was a single image competition possibly, and did it change as you went through the judging process?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different for me to just look at one image. I normally, look at other work in a form of a book, which is kind of the opposite. But I think I found it challenging, but like ultimately quite rewarding because me and John, who also judged the documentary category, I thought it was really great that you made it mandatory to have the explanation, or was it mandatory?
In some years it has been. This year it actually wasn't.
Oh, okay, right.
But
okay.
yeah, it's we typically and this is always we change things every year. So in the past we've had like the documentary category being like a compulsory thing for statements.
Yeah.
This year the platform that we used, it was like an optional thing. So yeah, it's always that.
Yeah. Well, it was extremely important for the explanation to be there because there was so many just really visually beautiful images, but without the kind of explanation, the meaning, even just like taking into context the photographer themselves, their place in that context as well. Just like, why are they taking this image? What are they part of this community? How does it look like they've spent time in this community? Are they outsiders looking in? These kinds of things where it's never just about the image. So it's nice to kind of like go through all of the images individually, but like there's just so much to just that one image. The explanation, like the person, who they are, their context, like there's just so many layers in it.
Did it possibly change the way that you might like put photographs into awards, or is that something that you wouldn't want to ever do, having seen what it's like on the other side? Or
yeah, I mean, I loved being on this side of the the power, but
we're not so powerful.
Yeah, I definitely would put a lot more effort in the explanation. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't even title my images. Most of my images are untitled. I don't know. I think I would definitely, put a lot more work in that part of it. Yeah.
Great. And Nick, how about for you? Like, how did you feel about going through like a single image competition? What were you looking for in that? What made a really successful photograph for you, and like what were the reasons why something really rose to the top?
Yeah, I suppose there was a lot to unpack. I'd never been on the other side of the process before, so I definitely felt that was something that I learnt a lot from, and the environment where we sort of went through the pictures and the dialogue that we had, I thought was really constructive, and it's. I feel like the group nature of that was so important, because sometimes, I suppose, we instinctually, being photographers, gravitate towards certain aesthetics or certain images that, resonate with our own interests and practice. But one of the things that I felt most rewarding from the process was actually having other people sort of feed in those influences, and maybe in some ways having our own ideas about what we're hoping to see and identify in an image, having those challenged. And I think it was, I mean, I was with Phuong, which was such a great conversation. I know that our category went a little bit longer than some of the other conversations, but that was reflective, of, I suppose, of everyone's willingness to put and have input into that process, and it was terrific.
Yeah, that like such a big learning process for us every year as well. I mean, like, I just think about how much it's evolved from our perspective of what we look for in an image over, from one year to another. And we actually started for the first, I think, 3 years or 4 years of operation. We had the same committee that judged every category. And we realised, like, well, we need to, there's strengths in that as well, because I guess we would get to know what had done really well the year before, and like it would allow us to really search for something new in that way. But
Yeah, I suppose what I was saying is that I feel like the diversity of it was, and I mean, you had photographers at very different stages of their practice as well, and I felt like that really fed into to a conversation that was really constructive and supportive. But yeah, definitely sort of fertile in terms of, you know, well, yeah, where is the side of value and what are we valuing here? So.
Yeah, great. And if anyone does want to have the power of being on this side of things, you can start your own photography competition. We did it, but anyway. So yeah, Ruiqi, like, what was your experience like? You know, being on the other side of an award and, you know, looking through imagery and you know, making decisions about, like, you know, what should rise, what should be as a finalist and winning categories.
Yeah, it's actually my first time to be a judge, so it's very exciting and also like really interesting to view like totally different photographs and to understand what they trying to show to us, and it's really interesting to understand the different ideas, and also I think experimentals means like you can do anything, like about photography. I mean, it's but we me and Harris, like, we see a lot of different kind of interact between the photos and the reality with no different kind of materials, so which is very interesting. And but also like my feeling is like some of photographs, like why they get into the short list, you know, is because they the way that they made their work is very make sense. Their work can answer the question why they choose this method to make this photo, why they choose this material. I think this is very important for me to answer the question why. And otherwise, like why you don't choose another method? Why you know, you need to answer the question to make your work make sense. And also it's really hard to, I think the hardest part for this job is like to choose the winner, you know, because some of images, they're really very great and you have to pick one. It's really hard to do this. But I think like everyone like who has been shortlisted is also they're doing their job well. So I think it's really a good experience for me, and also I think I looking forward to see more people trying to beyond the medium of photography, you know, because like our understanding of photography now is just the now. We have future, like it definitely gonna change in the future. So we just need to be brave to do anything to it, because it won't hurt.
Great. Yeah, so Phuong, how about for you? Like, what was it like being on the other side of things? And again, like back to that single image, you know, way of viewing the world. What was your experience?
I had a great experience because the moment I stepped in a room and there was Angus and there was Nick, who I was judging with, there was like a synergy happening with we had such a complementary notions of what makes a great photograph. Because I was seeing things, and then Nick and Gus were just absolutely not seeing that, and I feel like it's such a interesting way to read photographs that it cannot happen anywhere else unless there's like people who, you know, are so established in the scene that can also talk to you about it. And yeah, just like Anu said about caption and image descriptions, I feel like that can provide such a great context, and I'd love to see words and images exist in this non-vacuum environment where they provide structural and also visually beautiful and striking, you know, art pieces, not just photographs for me. Yeah.
And yeah, I think like a really nice place to kind of, as we're moving towards sort of the end of the chat, I guess, which always goes very, very fast from when you're sitting at the front here. Well, for me anyway. Like with what the amount of work that we actually see going through the awards, what are some of the things that you're seeing within like what Australian photographers are producing, the way that they're seeing things, and possibly even like where would you like to see that go in the future? So it's a bit of a hard one, but like thinking about the images that you've seen this year in the categories that you've all judged, what are some of the themes that are really standing out to you? Are there certain approaches to photography that you're recognising happening?
I think, well, one thing is the images that didn't quite make it to the top 10, top 20 were mainly images that we'd seen so many times before. And yeah, just kind of being a bit more brave, a bit more like trying to find your own voice in terms of like how to capture an image, what are you trying to say, all these things. It's just, we could tell when someone was kind of replicating another person's style, or it's like, oh, that looks like an Alex Soth image, and that looks like a, you know, so-and-so, like a Nat Geo vibe, you know? It's just, yeah, so just, yeah, get a bit weird with it, like, be experimental, you know?
So is that just, does that come, do you think, with, you know, really spending the time to understand why you're making the work that you're making, or does it come through taking, what is it, like 10,000 photos or whatever they say?
I actually think it, because when I started, I was doing that as well. Like, I definitely, you know, I found all the photographers that I loved and did something really similar to what they were doing. And you just kind of have to go through that to kind of be like, okay, cool, they've done it. It's not actually me. So, yeah, and then you end up finding your style.
I feel like they're starting to play the music like they do in the, what is it, like the Oscars or whatever. Like, yeah, time to wrap it up. Too bad, we're going to finish this chat. Yeah, how about for you, Nick? Were you seeing some, like, what's your experience coming out of this? Like, what are you seeing from Australian photographers and the way that they're making work?
Yeah, I definitely found the process really refreshing. I'm someone, I suppose, that likes to have my preconceptions about what photography is or could be challenged. And the work that I saw in the category that I judged was very much like that. And that was, yeah, so it was quite inspiring for me to see, I suppose, often they are, the staples of the photography are often very similar, as they have been historically, but to see those evolve and mutate into new styles of photography and new voices was something that was really inspiring. Yeah.
Great. How about for you, Ruiqi?
Oh yeah, I just want to encourage like people. If you are not brave for your work to put in like, you know, the landscape category or, you know, the documentary category, at least you need to brave to bring yourself in the experimental category, because there kind of no any rules for this category. And also like for the image, when I do the judging, like I actually don't know anyone. Like I just view the image and the statement, say how it's work, whether it makes sense. So totally don't need to worry about anything relate to your identity. You know, just totally don't worry and bring the thing that the crazy thing you can think about photography and bring it in the competition. That's it.
Great. And Phuong, how about for you?
Yeah, I get to judge the student category, and it's such a beautiful experience because it's like a little sneak peek into what the future is like with Australian photography. To see these photographers at such an early point in their career, but not only they're trying to master the craft of photography, the subject matter that they focus on is really inspiring for me. There's a lot of photographs focusing on Aboriginal custodianship, and there's like photographs about trans rights, and there's photographs about subverting the notions of age and masculinity. It's such a beautiful process to see what's the future is like for Australian photography. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that answer. And I think like the experimental category and the student category are kind of similar like that because, yeah, you end up with kind of all genres coming within those categories. And one of the things we think about every year is, well, the categories is something we think about every year. And we renamed those again this year from, you know, like portrait to people, from landscape to environment. And this isn't going to be so much of a question as just a comment, but, you know, maybe, like, we always have the debate of, like, should there be categories at all? Should it just be a completely open thing? So maybe I shouldn't have planted that seed quite yet, but who knows? So, you know, keep your eyes peeled for next year, and it might evolve again. It will definitely evolve again because that's the nature of it. So I just want to thank everybody so much for being part of the chat here today, for being so generous with your time, for being part of the awards this year. It's honestly like the reason why we do what we do, and yeah, we're so thankful. So we hope everyone here has enjoyed the chat. Anyone online, you can probably hear what a great party we're having with the jazz music, so next time come and join us. So please put your hands together for our amazing panel.
And just before we get too carried away with the concluding remarks, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Tom, Harriet and Gus for all the work that they've done with Photo Collective, not just this year, but yeah, it's been a really important thing over the course of my journey to feel like there's a space that, you know, kind of exists between, I suppose, more orthodox styles of photography and promoting newer photography, and yeah, being the last talk today for the photo awards, I thought it would definitely be worth yeah, giving those guys a round of applause for everything they've done.
Nick. Thank you so much. That's a very special way to end it. And I promise Nick hasn't been paid. That just happened there on the spot. Thanks so much, everybody, and thank you for being part of it. And that's us done for another year. But we constantly have things on the go. We'll get working on the next copy of the next issue of the magazine pretty much straight away, where we've got lots of exciting things in the works there. And we've got the Australian Photo Book Awards, which is opening again very soon. So we change gear straight into that. And yeah, there's going to be more events happening in the first part of next year. That's it. Thank you very much, and good evening.